To secure a throne, she would have her stepson executed. To survive, she would marry the man who murdered her children before her very eyes. And to rule as a god, she would shatter the most sacred taboo of her people and take her own full-blooded brother as her husband and king. This is the astonishing, brutal, and almost unbelievable story of Arsinoe II, the forgotten queen of Egypt, whose life of suffering, betrayal, and ruthless ambition laid the foundation for the reign of Cleopatra. Her story is not a myth. It is a masterclass in political survival, a harrowing journey from a teenage bride sold for an alliance to a desperate, childless refugee to the most powerful woman in the Hellenistic world. We are taught to think of Egyptian queens and imagine the singular glamour of Cleopatra, but the truth is, Cleopatra was merely the final product of a dynastic tradition forged in blood, incest, and the unbreakable will of the woman who came before her. Arsinoe's life is a testament to the fact that in the high-stakes Game of Thrones that followed the death of Alexander the Great, a woman had to be more cunning, more ruthless, and more willing to defy the laws of gods and men than any king. To uncover the full shocking story of the queen who rewrote the rules of power, make sure you subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell, because the history of the Ptolemies is far darker and more twisted than you could ever imagine. Arsinoe II was born into a world of violent creation, around 316 BCE, in a city that was itself still an infant, Alexandria. She was the daughter of gods in the making. Her father was Ptolemy I Soter, the savior, one of Alexander the Great's most brilliant and trusted generals, a Macedonian warrior who, in the chaotic aftermath of Alexander's death, had shrewdly carved out the richest prize of the fractured empire for himself, the ancient and wealthy land of Egypt. Her mother was the formidable Berenice I, a shrewd political operator who had started as Ptolemy's mistress and maneuvered her way to becoming his queen. Arsinoe was not raised in a stuffy, traditional court. She grew up in the heart of a cultural explosion. Alexandria was a brand new city, a bustling multicultural metropolis where the rigid martial traditions of the Macedonian Greeks collided with the ancient mystical traditions of the Egyptian pharaohs. In the halls of the newly constructed palace, Greek was the language of power, but the air was thick with the scent of Egyptian incense, and the walls were decorated with images of Greek gods alongside ancient Egyptian deities. From her earliest childhood, Arsinoe was immersed in this dual identity. She was educated by the finest Greek tutors in philosophy, rhetoric, and literature, trained to be a sophisticated Hellenistic princess. At the same time, she was raised to understand the divine symbolism of the pharaohs, learning the Egyptian language and recognizing that in this land, rulers were not merely men, they were living gods. This unique upbringing forged a mind that was both Greek in its analytical ruthlessness and Egyptian in its understanding of divine spectacle. She learned that power was a performance, that religion was a tool, and that survival depended on the ability to wear multiple masks. This education was not for her own enlightenment. It was to make her a more valuable asset. In the world of the Diadochi, the successors of Alexander, a princess was not a person. She was a high-stakes bargaining chip. Her womb, a vessel for forging alliances, and her hand in marriage, the seal on a treaty. She was being groomed for export, a beautifully educated and politically savvy piece of human property to be traded for military advantage. At the tender age of 15, Arsinoe's value as a political asset was cashed in. Her father arranged her marriage to a man almost 4 times her age, Lysimachus, the king of Thrace, a grizzled, battle-hardened contemporary of her own father, and one of the most powerful of Alexander's successors. At around 60 years old, Lysimachus was a living relic of a bygone era, a man whose body was a roadmap of scars from decades of warfare. For Arsinoe, this was a terrifying prospect. She was being sent from the glittering, sophisticated metropolis of Alexandria to a rough military court in a semi-barbaric northern kingdom. But for her father, the alliance was a stroke of genius. It created a powerful bloc against their mutual rival, Seleucus I, who ruled the vast territories of the former Persian Empire. Arsinoe, ever the dutiful daughter, played her part perfectly. She traveled to Thrace and became Lysimachus's queen. Despite the vast age difference, she quickly proved to be more than just a young bride. She embraced her role with the political acumen she had learned at her mother's knee. She established a powerful presence at court, patronizing arts and culture to bring a touch of Alexandrian sophistication to the rough hew. Most importantly, She fulfilled her primary dynastic duty. She bore Lysimachus 3 sons, Ptolemy, Lysimachus, and Philip. The birth of these sons was both her greatest triumph and the seed of her future destruction. It elevated her status from a foreign bride to the mother of potential heirs, but it also placed her and her children in direct conflict with the existing line of succession. Lysimachus already had a designated heir, a popular and capable son named Agathocles, from a previous marriage. The Thracian court was now a powder keg, divided between the supporters of the established heir and the ambitious faction that was coalescing around the young, intelligent Queen Arsinoe and her sons. The court of Lysimachus quickly became a snake pit of paranoia and whispered conspiracies. Arsinoe, fiercely protective of her own son's future, saw the popular heir Agathocles not as a stepson, but as the single greatest obstacle to her ambition. A bitter and dangerous rivalry developed between Arsinoe and Agathocles' own wife Lysandra, who also happened to be Arsinoe's half-sister from a different mother. The two Ptolemaic princesses waged a cold war within the palace walls, each maneuvering to secure the throne for their own children. Arsinoe proved to be the more ruthless player. She began a systematic campaign to poison her aging husband's mind against his firstborn son. She likely fed Lysimachus a steady diet of rumors and fabricated evidence, suggesting that Agathocles was plotting to overthrow him, that his popularity with the army was a threat, and that he was conspiring with their enemy, Seleucus. For a long time, Lysimachus resisted. He loved his son and trusted his loyalty, but Arsinoe was patient and relentless. Her whispers, combined with the natural paranoia of an aging tyrant, finally broke through. In 283 or 284 BCE, the unthinkable happened. Lysimachus, convinced of his son's treachery, had Agathocles arrested on dubious charges of treason. He was executed by poison. The murder of the popular and respected heir sent a shockwave of horror through the Hellenistic world. It was a catastrophic miscalculation. The execution didn't secure the kingdom, it shattered it. Many of Lysimachus's most loyal generals and city governors were disgusted by the act. They saw it for what it was, a palace coup orchestrated by an ambitious foreign queen. They began to defect in droves, switching their allegiance to the rival king, Seleucus I, who now had the perfect pretext to invade. Arsinoe had won the battle for succession, but in doing so, she had doomed the entire kingdom. The fallout from Agathocles' execution was swift and devastating. Seleucus I, sensing the weakness and internal division of Lysimachus's kingdom, launched a full-scale invasion in 281 BCE. The two elderly titans, the last surviving of Alexander the Great's original companions, met for a final cataclysmic confrontation at the Battle of Corupedium in Lydia. The battle was a disaster for Lysimachus. His army, demoralized and fractured by the recent turmoil, was decisively crushed. Lysimachus himself, now nearly 80 years old, died fighting in the thick of the battle, his kingdom collapsing around him. For Arsinoe, the news was a death sentence. In an instant, she had gone from being the powerful queen of a vast kingdom to a hated widow, the woman blamed for a disastrous war. The political enemies she had made, particularly the friends and allies of the murdered Agathocles, were now in control, and they were baying for her blood. Her life, and the lives of her 3 young sons, were in mortal danger. She was forced to flee for her life. Disguising herself as a commoner, she managed to escape from the capital and make her way to the fortified city of Cassandreia. She was now a political refugee, her queenly robes traded for the rags of a fugitive, her vast power evaporated overnight. Her sons, once destined for thrones, were now hunted exiles. The kingdom of Thrace, which her ambition had helped to destabilize, was no more, swallowed whole by the burgeoning Seleucid Empire. Arsinoe had learned the hardest lesson of Hellenistic politics. Power was a fleeting illusion, and the fall from the heights was always brutal and swift. In the chaotic power vacuum left by the deaths of Lysimachus and Seleucus, who was assassinated shortly after his victory, a new and terrifying figure emerged. Arsinoe's own half-brother, Ptolemy Keraunos. Keraunos, whose name meant the Thunderbolt, was a ruthless, unpredictable, and landless prince who had been exiled from Egypt by their father. He was a man driven by pure, naked ambition. After assassinating Seleucus, he seized control of the Macedonian army and declared himself king of Macedon. Arsinoe, now a desperate refugee with 3 sons to protect, saw a potential if deeply distasteful, path to survival, she entered into negotiations with her half-brother. She proposed a political marriage. She still held some powerful cities and a loyal fleet, assets that Kharanos needed to legitimize his shaky rule. In return, he would marry her, recognize her as his queen, and, most importantly, adopt her sons and guarantee their safety and their future claim to the throne. It was a devil's bargain, a marriage born of desperation and mutual distrust. Arsinoe likely hated and feared Kharanos, but she saw no other choice. She agreed to marry him, a move that shocked the Greek world, as marriage between half-siblings, while not unheard of, was still deeply unsettling. But the Thunderbolt had no intention of honoring the deal. He saw her sons not as stepsons, but as future rivals. The marriage was a trap. Shortly after the wedding ceremony in the Macedonian capital of Pella, as Arsinoe's two younger sons, Lysimachus and Philip, ran to their new father to embrace him, Kharanos gave a signal. His guards seized the boys and murdered them in cold blood, right in front of their horrified mother, who tried futilely to shield them with her own body. It was an act of such profound and calculated cruelty that it cemented Kharanos' reputation as a monster. Arsinoe, her world destroyed for a second time, barely managed to escape the slaughter. She fled Pella, her royal entourage gone, her children dead, her life in ruins, and made her way to the sacred sanctuary island of Samothrace, once again a desperate fugitive. Samothrace was a place of ancient mysteries, an island dedicated to the cult of the great gods, and its temples offered asylum to anyone who sought refuge. A sacred protection recognized throughout the Hellenistic world. Here, amidst the chanting of priests and the smoke of sacrifices, the twice-widowed, childless queen had time to plot her next move. She was destitute, but she was not defeated. She still possessed her formidable intellect, her unmatched political experience, and her royal blood. Her only remaining hope lay in the place she had started, Egypt. Her full brother, Ptolemy II Philadelphus, now sat on the throne of their father. Cautiously, likely using a network of secret messengers, she began to negotiate her return. Her journey back to Alexandria was fraught with peril. She traveled in disguise, a fallen queen moving through a world controlled by her enemies. When she finally arrived in the glittering city of her birth, she entered a court that was both familiar and hostile. Her brother, Ptolemy II, was already married to another woman, Arsinoe I, who had borne him heirs. Arsinoe II was seen as a threat, a destabilizing influence. But she was also a Ptolemy, a daughter of the dynasty's founder, and she wielded immense personal charisma and prestige. She quickly set about turning the court to her advantage. She used her deep understanding of politics to make herself indispensable to her brother, offering him shrewd advice on foreign policy and military strategy. At the same time, she began a campaign to undermine his wife, Arsinoe I. It wasn't long before accusations of a conspiracy against the king were leveled at Arsinoe I. Whether the plot was real or a fabrication orchestrated by Arsinoe II, we will never know. The result, however, was decisive. Arsinoe I was disgraced and exiled to the south of Egypt. The path to the throne was clear once again. With her rival gone, Arsinoe II made her final, most audacious move. Around 275 BCE, she married her own full-blooded brother Ptolemy II. To the Greek world, this was an act of profound and shocking impiety. Sibling incest was a deep-seated taboo, a perversion associated with the despotic kings of Persia and the strange gods of barbarian lands. The Greeks of Alexandria were reportedly scandalized, but Arsinoe, with her dual education, had a different perspective. In ancient Egyptian royal ideology, sibling marriage was not a taboo, it was a sacred tradition. The gods themselves, like Isis and Osiris, were both brother and sister, husband and wife. By marrying her brother, Arsinoe was not just securing her political position, she was elevating them both from the status of mere Macedonian kings to that of divine Egyptian pharaohs. It was a masterstroke of political theater. They adopted the epithet Philadelphoi, sibling lovers, embracing the controversy and turning it into a mark of their unique divinity. They were not just a royal couple, they were the Theoi Philadelphoi, the sibling-loving gods, living incarnations of an ancient and powerful tradition. This act skillfully blended Greek and Egyptian customs, satisfying their Macedonian court with a legitimate queen of pure royal blood, while simultaneously appealing to their Egyptian subjects with a practice that resonated deeply with their own mythology. It was a move that no one else could have made, a product of Arsinoe's unique upbringing and her ruthless political genius. Arsinoe II was not content to be a mere consort. Having secured her position as queen, she assumed the role of an active co-ruler, wielding power on a scale unprecedented for a woman in the Hellenistic world. She was not a power behind the throne. She was on the throne beside her brother, husband. Her influence was felt in every corner of the administration. During the First Syrian War against their Seleucid rivals, she played an active role in military and diplomatic strategy. Uniquely for a queen, she was awarded victories alongside her brother, a clear sign of her direct involvement. She was a driving force behind major administrative and economic reforms, helping to create the efficient and highly centralized bureaucracy that would make Ptolemaic Egypt one of the wealthiest kingdoms on earth. But her greatest genius lay in the realm of propaganda and religious symbolism. She and Ptolemy II launched a massive campaign to promote their image as divine rulers. They were depicted together on coins, a first for a Ptolemaic queen, showing her not as a subordinate, but as an equal partner. Temples were built in their honor across Egypt, and festivals were established to celebrate their divine union. Poets at the Great Library of Alexandria were commissioned to write works praising their love and their divine status. Arsinoe skillfully crafted a public persona for herself as a living goddess, a new Isis, a protector and benefactor of the Egyptian people. She even created a living cult in her own name, something no Ptolemaic queen had ever done before. She was not just the king's wife, she was Arsinoe Philadelphus, a god in her own right. Perhaps Arsinoe's most enduring and controversial legacy was the establishment of full sibling marriage as a dynastic tradition. Her own marriage to Ptolemy II set a powerful precedent that would be followed by many of their successors, right down to the last and most famous Ptolemaic queen, Cleopatra VII, who herself married two of her younger brothers. This practice, while shocking to outsiders, served a crucial political purpose. It kept power and wealth concentrated within the immediate royal family, prevented the dilution of the pure Macedonian bloodline, and reinforced the dynasty's claim to divine pharaonic status. Arsinoe created a new model of queenship. Before her, queens were primarily tools for alliances and mothers of heirs. After her, they could be co-regents, goddesses, and major political players in their own right. She laid the institutional groundwork for the powerful queens who would follow her, creating a political and religious space for royal women that had not existed before in the Hellenistic world. When Arsinoe II died around 270 BCE, her brother and husband, who seems to have genuinely loved her, was devastated. He gave her one of the most elaborate funerals in the kingdom's history and intensified her official deification. He established a powerful state-sponsored cult in her name that would last for centuries, with cities and districts throughout the empire being named Arsinoe in her honor. Her image continued to be stamped on coins long after her death, a constant reminder of her power and influence. Her life was a brutal odyssey of loss, survival, and breathtaking ambition. She was a victim of the cruel politics of her time, yet she learned to master that cruelty and turn it into a source of unprecedented power. She was the queen who was forced to marry her brother, and in doing so, became a god, forever changing the destiny of Egypt.